Hey, this is Sherry. Case problem 1, module 8, is all about modeling data to help us make better business decisions. So in this scenario, case problem 1, I've got a woman, Brenda, and she works for an insurance company and she runs different kind of events. So her goal is to run an event, and at the end she wants to make money. All right, it's not a good idea if you keep running events and your costs are greater than your revenue and you never make money. So what we have here are some projections or estimates based on the number of attendees for one of her events. So on the left-hand side of the sheet, again, let's just go over this so that we understand what it is that we're looking at and what we're doing. We have number of attendees, and then we have how much they pay us to attend the event, $1,000 per person. So this is our revenue. Underneath our revenue, we have all of our costs. All right, we have variable costs, and these are the ones that change based on the number of attendees that we have. All right, so we can add up our variable costs and multiply them times the number of attendees to get the total variable cost. We have fixed costs. Fixed costs don't change at all based on the number of attendees. So training materials, the cost goes up. The more people we have attending because we have to get everybody a set of training materials. Fixed costs are like the speaker. The speaker is going to come and teach and present whether we have 10 attendees or 500 attendees. So the speaker cost stays the same. Fixed costs don't change. Then we have mixed costs. Mixed costs are a combination of fixed and variable. So the room cost is a good example because we need a room whether we have 10 people or 500 people. So there's a minimum room cost. However, as the number of people or attendees goes up, we might need a bigger room. And so room costs and meal costs and support costs have a minimum cost that goes up or down, changes depending on the number of people that you have. So these numbers are also tied to the number of attendees. And because these numbers change based on number of attendees, we also have to figure out, well, what should that charge be based on how many people we have? And to do that, we have a lookup table. We have a lookup table for the room. So if we have between 0 and 100 attendees, the room fee is going to be $1,500, and that's our minimum charge. As the number of attendees goes up, then the room charge goes up. So we need to create a lookup table for room costs, a VLOOKUP that goes out to the attendees table. All right, it goes out to the room lookup table, I'm sorry. Factors in the number of attendees from cell B5 and brings back what that room charge would be. We've done this a whole bunch of times already, so hopefully the VLOOKUP is pretty straightforward for you. We need to do a VLOOKUP for the room costs, also for the meal costs, which is this table right here, meal catering, and then the third one is support costs. Now you'll notice that meal costs actually go down based on the number of people. So the more people we have, the cost per person goes down. And seminar support costs go up as we add additional people. So we build our VLOOKUP function and we come up with our total mixed costs. And at the end of the day, she'd like to know that the balance is going to be positive. The balance is total revenue, how much money we're bringing in based on the number of attendees, minus our total cost. And our total cost is a combination of fixed costs and variable costs that are also based on how many people are attending. So if I was Brenda, I'd want to be maximizing this number. So one thing that we can do is we can model our revenue and our costs, and we can do that in a very simple way based on changing the number of attendees. So as the number of attendees goes up and down, our revenue will change, and so will our variable and mixed costs. So what we have over here is a little bit of break-even analysis, and we've got a chart put together that says based on the number of attendees changing, starting here at 50 and then going all the way up to 500, how do our revenue and our cost change? All right, and this is all put together by us for Excel using a single variable data table. All right, we could do this manually and build it ourselves, but why would we do that if we can ask Excel to do it for us? To set up your single variable data table, again, the variable that we're changing is attendees, and we have set up our initial information about attendees, and this all comes from what we did in our worksheet over here in column B. All right, so this is information that we already know. Then you will select your data table. Select your data table and come up to the Data tab, What If Analysis, Data Table. Because this is a single variable table, we're only going to have a column input. We're not going to have a row and a column input. And if you look in your book, in step 12, it tells you that cell B5 should be the column input cell. B5, if you look over here, B5 is the number of attendees. So if we say OK, all of this data will populate based on the model, and you can look at your different revenue and costs and balance for the change in the number of attendees. All right, my table is already filled out. When you start this, yours will be blank. But after you run the data table, the one variable data table, then yours hopefully should look like mine. If you want to, and then we can chart it. And this is a scatter with straight lines chart, and then you'll do a little bit of formatting on it to make it look also like this. Now, perhaps you, like Brenda, say, I don't want to just look at the number of attendees, I also want to change the fee. I want to see what happens to my numbers, my profit, revenue, and my revenue and my cost numbers if I change both attendees and the fee. And we can do that using a data table as well, and that is a two-variable data table. So come up to What If Analysis, select Data Table. You'll want to select the table area first, which I did not do. And then because there are two variables that we're changing, one of them will be attendees, and the other one will be the registration fee. And again, this is in your book. In step 14, it shows you how to set it up. And then in step 15, so B6 is your row input, and B6 is registration fee, and B5 is the number of attendees. So you'll do some modeling based on the number of attendees and the registration fee. And you can see in this model, after I've run it, that if we have 150 people and we charge $400, then at the end of the day, we'll still be in the red or negative, which isn't good. We need to up the fee to $500 in order to start making money. All right, so this is a nice way to analyze data to help you make decisions based on having two variables instead of one. The last thing that you're going to do is you're going to create a scenario, and scenarios offer even more flexibility than data tables. A scenario allows you to look at multiple variables. So instead of just looking at the number of attendees and the registration fee, in a scenario we could also take into account variable costs and fixed costs, many different variables, and Excel will manipulate them all for us in multiple different ways, and it's pretty cool. Oops, hit the wrong button there. Hold on. Let's see. So the way the scenario manager works, if I come up to what if analysis and click on scenario manager, you can see that I have already set up, oops, I made a mistake. It should be scenario 1, 2, and 3, and I actually typed in seminar 1, 2, and 3. For each of these different scenarios, I can change, these are the different cells that I can change. All right, so if I click on edit, let's go ahead and take a look at scenario 1. All right, in fact, I'll change the name of it right now to scenario 1. So in scenario 1, I want to change the values in B5, B6, B10, B11, and B15 through 19. So these are all the cells: number of attendees, registration fee, variable costs, fixed costs, and mixed costs. All right, and once you do that, once you identify which cells are going to change, then you can enter the values for each one of the changing cells. So this is my baseline scenario, which is at 200 attendees, and you can fill in, you're just typing in all these numbers over here, and then you're saying okay. All right, and you've saved that scenario. Scenario 2 is slightly different. If I edit it, since mine are already set up, again, I'm using the same set of cells that I'm changing. Attendees B5, revenue or registration fee B6, and so on and so forth. But the values that I've entered in scenario 2 are different. So I put in the number of attendees at 300, and I've changed the registration fee. I've dropped it to 400. All right, I've changed the training materials to 175. So I have created a whole different scenario of number of attendees and registration fee and different costs. And I've saved that as scenario 2. And we'll do the same thing with scenario 3. For scenario 3, it's the same cells, but different values. In scenario 3, I've dropped the number of attendees from 200 down to 150, and I've changed the registration fee to 600. And then I've changed all of my costs associated with that, and I said okay. So now, if you move this over to the side, you can actually look here at the different scenarios, and when I say okay for scenario 1, click on show. All right, and well, that didn't change much. Let's do scenario 2, and we'll say show, and you can see how everything changes. All right, the numbers here, my break-even analysis. I can't scroll over now because I'm in the scenario, but my 2 variable data table, you can see how the whole thing updates based on each scenario that you added. Let's show scenario 3. Well, actually, let's close it, and let's scroll over to the right so we can see the entire screen. Come back to what if analysis, scenario manager, and let's look at scenario 3. All right, so you can see for scenario 3, based on the numbers that I put in, what the balance analysis is. And so this is a pretty powerful tool that allows you to manipulate more than 2 variables. All right, so in case problem 1, what you saw was the ability for Brenda to look at her break-even based on just changing the number of attendees using a single variable data table. And then she said, I want to look at 2 variables. I want to look at both the number of attendees and the registration fee, and I want to see how the numbers change. All right, and then to look at the effect of everything, not just attendees and fee, then we have to run different scenarios, because the scenario analysis allows us to change all of these different variable, fixed, and mixed costs.